Hey guys, so I got a suggestion the other day to do a video to creepypasta. It was some kind of like I lost my family to the deep web or dark web or something. Yeah, so it's called Horrifying Deep Web or Web Stories. I lost my family to the deep web complete. I did look at some comments and I give the video a like just because I hope I'm gonna like it. It is 35 minutes long, so this is gonna be a long video. The longest one I've ever done for sure. Kind of nervous because I don't know what to expect. I'm kind of like, I'm just going to be sitting here for like 35 minutes. But I hope it's good. He did say it's worth the wait. And I think Jacob somebody, I don't know his name, Jacob something, I'll put it here. He recommended that I do it, so I was like, sure, why not? Later I might do another video. This video will probably take like a while to save. But, because like even my 17-minute videos, they take like 20 minutes to save. So it's going to take like an hour to save, but that's okay. You gotta at least try and do what your friend did. Sorry, I had to text my sister. Okay. Anyway guys, without further ado, let's see how this is. I'm kind of nervous once again, but let's see. Sounds like it's a good story. Okay, let's go.
I lost my family to the deep web. Allow me to just preface this by saying that I never used the deep web for anything too bad. I never bought drugs, I never stole movies or music. Hell, I rarely even looked at porn. I had the most generous wife you could ever imagine. I honestly didn't need porn with a woman like that in my life.
That's cute.
I had always been fascinated by computers, but the town I grew up in was a small hick town, if that. I remember hearing about computers and the internet, and the idea of it honestly blew me away. Being able to access information from anywhere in the world was amazing, and it astounded me that it wasn't embraced and pursued by more people.
I agree.
So, I not only lived in a technology desert, but my family wasn't exactly rich either. My mom slaved away at a large corporation where she was paid much less than she was worth. My dad worked various odd jobs, but always invested most of his time into the local church. He was a stereotypical Bible thumper, and, as one might expect, I grew to resent the religion. I always felt like religion was a one-way street. They expected me to pray to and serve some imaginary deity in the sky, and all those who don't would burn in hell. My interest in history led me to the realization that every religion was similar in that regard. And that, for me, was enough to dismiss them all. Thankfully, they raised my sister and I to work hard. We both went to college and got decent jobs. She became a nurse and moved to New York. I followed my passion for history and eventually became a world history teacher at a well-paying high school in a suburb of Tennessee, not too far from where I grew up. I married my high school sweetheart shortly after getting my teaching job, and things could not have been better.
That's cute.
We found a nice house that was close enough to both of our jobs. My wife and I had been saving up money because we were trying to have a child, although it was taking longer than we thought. After about a year of trying, we saw a doctor. He said that we were both able, but it would take some more time. This was almost nice in a way, because we did have more money than we needed for when the baby came.
Oh, that's good.
I decided to take a few $100s and get that computer I'd been dreaming about for years. I was so excited when my wife agreed that I should. We couldn't raise a kid in this day and age without a computer, after all, right? Well, I put it in our home office, and I quickly became enamored with my computer. I can honestly say that my life would have been so much better if I'd had one of these growing up. I could literally learn anything in the world I wanted.
You can look up
I found myself reading dozens of articles, speeches, books, and watching tutorials. I could not have been happier. Time marched on, and I found myself finishing up the semester and getting ready for the summer. It was pretty boring, honestly. I still got paid for it, but because the school was such a crappy district, there weren't many things for teachers to get involved in over the summer.
That sucks, yeah.
That was when my genuine interest in the internet became something of an addiction. I was on that thing at nearly all hours of the day. Since my wife and I were still trying to have a baby, we were having sex like two animals. Life could not have gotten any better.
Too much information.
Unfortunately, when things get that good, they can only get worse. It was a month and a half through the summer vacation when I found myself reading this same shit on the internet. There was nothing new, or at the very least, nothing worth learning about. However, I did recall hearing about something strange. It was called the Deep Web. I never studied it in depth, but I eventually had a basic understanding of it.
Here we go.
I downloaded Tor and started looking around online. I made sure to be extra careful because I have heard stories of people being stalked, kidnapped, or even killed from using the Deep Web. I found myself staring at dozens of random links on the hidden wiki at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Don't click them.
I kept clicking away until anything useful came up.
Don't click them.
I did end up finding a lot of mathematics and science stuff, but I'm a history teacher. I'd rather learn about history. A few more hours of searching, and I found something that at least remotely piqued my interest. It was a conspiracy theory page. Now, I don't consider myself to be anything of a conspiracy theorist, nor am I the least bit paranoid about things like the Illuminati. But these were some of the most solid arguments for foul play from the government I had ever seen. There were classified documents, in-depth research, and an overwhelming amount of evidence for almost every theory I saw. Don't get me wrong, there were a few that seemed a bit far-fetched, but the vast majority of them made some damn good arguments. Eventually, I couldn't hold my eyes open any longer, and I had to go to bed. I powered down my computer, and as quiet as a mouse, crawled into bed with my tender, loving wife.
Okay.
I felt a bit of a void between us, though. She never had the lust for knowledge like I did, and if I were to tell her about the crazy and interesting things I read online, she'd playfully tease me that she was falling asleep or something to that effect. The next day, I was right back on the Deep Web looking for new things to widen my world's view. Nearly an hour had gone by, and all I found was a bunch of broken links. I was about to sign off when a box appeared in the corner of my screen with a link in it. Being as naive as I was, I clicked on it. I was absolutely mortified at what I saw next.
What'd you see?
At first glance, I thought the abomination on my computer screen was some kind of a torture video. No, I was dead wrong. A toddler whimpered as he sat there gagged and bound, covered in blood and piss. He begged the man in frame to stop, but to no avail. A deranged man in a Guy Fawkes mask stared at the camera as he thrusted his body to and fro. A few seconds went by when the man finished, and he got up to do a strange dance. If there was a cross between a football player's victory dance and a circus clown's opening act, the resulting atrocity might resemble the strange act the man performed over the child. To my horror, I realized it was a live feed hooked up to a webcam with a live chat box on the inside. It took a few minutes for the shocking realization to fully wash over me. After I'd collected myself, I foolishly started to read what was in the live chat box. The most horrid and disgusting things you can imagine were being requested. I had a hard time believing that real people were behind a keyboard somewhere in the world typing these things. I really don't want to go into too much more detail about what they were saying. It suddenly dawned on me that I could just close this shit and be over with it.
Yeah, close it. Unplug
I
it.
jolted the mouse and clicked to X out of the page,
Man, that
but nothing happened. I felt my stomach drop. What the hell was going on? I kept asking myself. I'd never heard about anything like this happening. I was about to manually reboot my computer when the man on the video stream called out my full name. "Leaving so soon, John Edwards. Off to teach another lesson at that little shithole you call a high school," he asked in a smug tone. I had no idea what to do. I clicked every button on the computer, keyboard, and mouse. No matter what I did, there was no reaction. I heard him start reading off my credit card information, and I had had enough. I unplugged my computer from the back and powered it down. It was a relief to have finally left that nightmare of a web page.
Well, either way, he still knows your
shit. At the speed he was able to get my personal information.
How did he do that, though? What?
I changed my credit card number and any other information I could. My wife was a bit suspicious, but she didn't pry too much at it. We had a very trusting relationship, and I didn't want to frighten her, so I kept the incident to myself. A few days went by, and I didn't even go into my office. I left my computer in there, unplugged. I'd admittedly scared to turn that damn thing on ever again.
I would be too.
I knew I'd eventually have to face my fear, so I entered my office. I booted her up, and everything seemed to be normal. I deleted Tor and made sure to be done with that deep web shit.
Yeah.
I casually loaded up Google Chrome, and everything seemed to be perfectly fine.
Until?
Nothing seemed to come to fruition from my little mishap, and decided I was going to be safe after all. Oh, how wrong I was. About 5 months later, my wife's sister ended up moving in. She really was such a pleasant woman, and we did have extra space, so we decided to allow her to stay with us. It was just a few weeks later that my wife and I got the good news. She was pregnant.
Oh, yes.
She was already a couple weeks in, and she and the baby were both healthy and in good shape.
Good.
It was the best feeling in the world getting that news.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I had gotten back into the swing of things with my job and occasionally reading some decent articles on the internet. We were expecting our precious baby girl in just a few days.
Oh, shit.
I had completely forgotten about the events that had transpired the night I decided to use the deep web. It was a typical Sunday afternoon. I sat on my back porch drinking some cold sweet tea and listening to the hum of nature. Natural life can be so beautiful. Alone I sat in a serene peace, seemingly impenetrable from the vile world that lay outside the boundaries of my own little haven. That was when I heard a crash and screaming coming from my house. Immediately, I thought it was my sister-in-law watching TV too loud, which she had a tendency to do. But then I heard my wife sobbing uncontrollably. Panic sunk into my heart, and I dashed into the house. I entered the large living room just in time to see a large masked man slit my wife's throat. I screamed at him, but he didn't even acknowledge my existence.
What the fuck?
I was screaming uncontrollably and ran toward him with intent to kill.
Yeah.
I smashed a glass lamp over his head, but he didn't even flinch.
What?
I was questioning if he had even felt it or not. He turned around and grabbed me by my throat. He lifted me up off the ground. I brought my face close to his. You thought I forgot about you, boy. I instantly recognized him as the man from the deep web livestream I saw all those months ago.
Good job.
That was the last thing I remember before waking up. I awoke to saw my sister-in-law's mangled corpse on the floor. It looked like she'd been cut in fucking half. To my horror, I saw my beloved wife's body there, drenched in blood. I sobbed uncontrollably for some time. I'm still not sure how much time had passed while I knelt there and sobbed. Time may very well have stood still for all I knew, or cared. But after I composed myself, I noticed something strange about my wife's corpse. Her stomach was not nearly as large as I had remembered it to be.
Oh no.
I crawled over to her to analyze her body further.
The baby's gone.
The wicked idea danced across my imagination. I pushed her on her side, and my hunch turned out to be true. That sick fucking bastard had cut my child out of my wife and had taken it.
Oh my god.
It was certainly far long enough to have been born at this point.
Oh my god.
What the fuck was I going to do?
Shit.
I called the police, and the operator's apparent apathy toward the situation did nothing but anger me. 911, what's the emergency? Someone killed my family, and I think they took my daughter. I frantically let out in a single breath. I continued to tell them my address. We'll have someone over there as soon as we can. The way she said that frustrated me. Here I am, sitting in a puddle of my family's blood. My life's been drastically changed forever, and she makes it seem as if it's just another day at the office. Where's the empathy? Where is the compassion for your fellow human being? After days of investigation and questioning, they were unable to find the killer or my daughter. I told those lazy fucking cops that this man found me and my family because I used the deep web. But because it was so long ago, I couldn't find the website again. They couldn't do anything about it. They called it a random act of heinous violence. And within 2 weeks, this story did make the local news, but nothing more happened than that. I guess it wasn't shocking enough. The whole incident was forgotten, and people were worrying about the next horrible thing. How could I live with myself after this? My entire family was dead because I was snooping around something I had no business to be partaking in.
You shouldn't have done
The
that.
following weeks were the worst of my life. I would drink as soon as I got up, and then drink all day. Alcohol was the only escape from this fucked up reality I had to live with.
You fucked up.
I was the shell of a human being, nothing more than a clusterfuck of negative, hideous emotions. Misery became my only company, but I had no one to be miserable with. I had to live this horrible fate alone. Years had gone by when I looked into the mirror to see the unshaven face I had come to despise. Every day I thought about where my daughter might be. Maybe they sent her away to live with a nice, loving family across the country.
Yeah, okay.
I half-heartedly deluded myself. Deep down, I knew she was most likely raised in some human trafficking ring where she'd been beaten, raped, or even worse, in some hellhole filled with those sick fucks. I slowly made my way to my porch when I saw a familiar vehicle pull into my driveway. I could barely remember who it belonged to. When I saw his face, I instantly recognized him. It was my father. I hadn't seen him in years.
Oh shit.
Son, I know you're hurting, but this is no way to live your life. Do you think you can move on? I looked up at him, grimacing. Do you think I'd be here doing this if I could move on? He gave me a rough look and said that I needed to get revenge. He placed a revolver on the table in front of me, gave me a stern nod, and left. I was honestly shocked. This was the most religious man I'd known in my life who argued against killing of any kind.
Shit.
I didn't know if I could do it, but I started to think of how many people those bastards had done this to. I can't be the only one. So, if I were to theoretically go through with this, I'd really be doing the world a service. No.
You still got in trouble.
No, fuck that. I'm avenging my family, and I'm going to save my daughter.
Good.
Over the next couple of days, I drained my bank account and purchased thousands of dollars in weaponry and ammunition.
Shit.
I quickly realized that there was a lot of illegal stuff that would come in real handy. I turned back to the deep web to buy spying equipment, heavy weapons, and explosives.
This is getting
It
interesting.
took about a month to gather enough supplies for my suicide mission, and as I sat in my basement with thousands of rounds of ammunition, pounds of explosives, and almost $20,000 in spying equipment,
Shit.
I knew I was going to wreak havoc on those sons of bitches once and for all.
Yeah, but how are you gonna find them? It's been years.
Days went by and I began to feel lethargic about the whole situation. I hadn't any idea of how I was going to find these people.
Exactly.
Or even if I could. It was like looking for a needle in a haystack. 2 weeks went by of endless hours on the deep web, looking for the bastard who'd taken my family away from me. I came across something that seemed almost familiar in a way. It was another live stream of people torturing children. I felt a vile hatred rise up from the pit of my stomach. I knew this wasn't my guy.
Leave.
But I'd grown too impatient to wait any longer. If I can't find the needle in the haystack, I guess I'm just going to have to burn down the entire thing. I thought to myself with a hatred oozing from my pores. I made use of some spying equipment I bought and was able to figure out where these bastards were broadcasting from. An evil grin stretched across my face when I figured out they were right here in my own state. I loaded my car with a machine gun, an AK-47, and C4. I started my drive.
Go, dude, go.
This may have been the longest 2 hours in my life. I was so excited to finally kill some of these sick, disgusting people. After almost taking a wrong turn, I found the rusty old barn house the torture porn was being broadcasted from.
And?
There was surprisingly only a few people there. A total of 4 men were running this operation. I watched for a while, but they never came out of the barn house. With my AK-47 in hand, I made my way to the entrance. I could see them raping a small boy, no older than 12. He was crying hysterically and covered in blood.
Oh shit.
They were completely oblivious to me. I aimed my rifle sight down. Admittedly, it took me a minute to actually pull the trigger. Actually pulling it was much harder than I would have thought. But seeing these sickos violate this defenseless child made me realize these people were really better off dead.
That's true.
I open fire and scream, "Fuck you!" as loud as my lungs would permit. From what I could tell, at least 2 of them were dead. 1 was shot but alive, and the 4th noticed quickly enough and got behind a truck. He had a pistol on him and fired back at me. This guy must have been legally blind or something, because he missed pretty damn bad. Minutes went by, and I slowly crept around to the other side of the building. The one with the gun was screaming at the other one to get up, but he was clearly unable. I got as close to the other gunman as I could in preparation to kill him. I aimed my sight down, but I must have made a noise because he heard me. He spun around and shot.
Shit.
The bullet nearly grazed my skull. The gunshot was deafening. I ran toward him, expecting him to have had just fired his last shot. He had. I put a bullet through that motherfucker's head. I stood over his bloodied corpse for a brief minute. I wanted to spit on it, but I didn't want to leave any evidence for the cops, so I resisted the urge. I walked over to the bloodied one I shot earlier, laughing as I did. I placed my boot on his throat. He kept begging for his life, but there was a better chance of hell freezing over before I spared him. I made sure his last minutes on this earth were as miserable as possible. Glaring down at this sick man, I knew I was doing the right thing. I knew I was ridding the world of scum. Please, don't kill me.
Please don't kill. Fuck you,
This
bitch.
wasn't my idea.
I
What
don't
did
care.
you
You're still doing
fucking
it.
say? You have the nerve to try and talk your way out of your inevitable death. How dare you? I pulled my leg back, and in one swift motion, I kicked his skull in. His gray matter spilled all over the floor. The poor boy was sobbing uncontrollably. I pulled out my prepaid cell phone, dialed 911, and told them of the situation. I told the boy to forget about this night, and then I turned to walk away. The ride home seemed to drag on for hours. I'd heard so many things about having PTSD after killing people. So many articles online said that after killing someone, you'd almost always feel guilty, even if you knew you did the right thing. But the truth was, I didn't feel guilty at all.
Oh, okay.
I felt powerful. More powerful than I'd ever felt in the years leading up to this day. I knew after I saw that babbling pile of shit beg for his life, that I was going to kill again. It felt so right to have someone begging for their life, and knowing that you weren't going to grant them their wish made it all the more satisfying.
Well,
My life
shit.
continued like that for many months. I'd spend almost all my free time on the deep web, trying to track down anything that could lead me to my daughter, and killing anyone I deemed worthy to die. I was like an over-the-top vigilante or something. Jesus, those were the days. Eventually, I became more involved in the private sector and started accepting payments to kill people. I'd gained enough notoriety in the criminal underworld that almost anyone knew who I was. I just wish I could go back in time and tell myself how much more money I could make by simply killing people. It makes me realize what a waste of my life teaching those hopeless dipshits really was. I was making chump change compared to what I make now. People apparently pay good money to have someone killed. I'd already made just under $3 million in the past 6 months, and I don't even have to repeat the same monotonous lecture 7 times in a day. I almost became apathetic about ever finding my daughter again. She was most likely dead, or even worse. She could be anywhere in the world, and the odds of ever finding her were next to none, I thought.
That's sad.
One day, a connection of mine told me he had a really good gig set up. He said that if I could kill 3 people well enough, I could become a regular for an underground overlord. For those of you that don't know, this was the kind of guy who had more money than God. He ran a lot of underground operations and even had a strong affiliation with the Silk Road before it got shut down. I knew this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I jumped at the chance. I went over the information. I immediately realized these were going to be the highest-profile people I would ever kill. When I discovered I was going to have to kill a family with a young child, I was mortified. The only people I've had to kill up until this point have been other criminals and sadists. How was I going to bring myself to take the lives of a seemingly innocent family? I would never even know why exactly I was being hired to kill them.
Don't do it.
You can't ask questions like that to the higher-ups. Anyone who did this was normally killed themselves, or at the very least, ostracized by the organization they were trying to work for. It was a pretty serious business I got myself into. I had no problem with that. I only did what I was told, and nothing more. That was part of the reason I gained so much notoriety in my field. In fact, most people in this field never even got a chance to work for the Overlord. And if you're wondering why I keep referring to him as the Overlord, it's because he doesn't communicate with you directly. There are a lot of people looking for him, and he's responsible for billions in damage, and the loss of countless innocent lives. Although they don't have a lot of information on him as of right now, and will probably never catch him. The next day, I was going to have to start tracking down this family I was ordered to kill.
Don't do it.
But that night, I was in a small bar in the middle of nowhere.
That's shit.
Drowning in alcohol like there was no tomorrow, and contemplating how exactly I was going to bring myself to do this. I knew in the pit of my stomach that I wasn't a murderer. Well, let me rephrase that. Not a murderer of the innocent. I had no problem killing the evil men of the earth. I encountered so many sickos in my life. How could someone torture an animal or another person? I still couldn't bring myself to understand how anyone could do such a thing.
I don't know
Even
either.
if I found the man who kidnapped my daughter, I wouldn't torture him. I'd end his pathetic life, and I'd be done with it. Even after all the pain and agony that bastard put me through, I still knew I was better than him. I wouldn't become the monster I sought to destroy. The bar began spinning after my 5th shot, and I immediately came to regret this. I didn't feel threatened by the others in the bar before, but once I lost control of myself, it seemed as if I became all that much more paranoid. I became so much more vulnerable to those around me, and I couldn't die just yet. I knew the events that were soon to come would be life-altering. I had this great feeling about the next job and the opportunities it would bring, which is quite unusual. I never feel intuitive like this. With hopes of surviving until tomorrow, I drunkenly made my way back to the log cabin I was staying in. The snow and ice outside made it much more difficult to get there. As sad as it is to say, I ended up falling 3 times before I got back home and locked the door. It wasn't a far walk, but adding strong alcohol to any walk makes it seem like a journey around the entire globe.
Pretty much. Well, I
laid
wouldn't know. I
down,
don't drink that much.
and the thought of becoming the most powerful criminal in the world rushed through my mind before I went to the realm of the unconscious. The next morning, my ears were assaulted by the alarm I set on my phone. I downed a couple aspirins to cope with the headache and got to work. The family I was going to be attacking lived in a relatively populated area, and I knew if I was going to pull this off, it would have to be quiet. I sharpened 3 separate knives and placed them in my coat. The idea of bringing one of those blades across the neck of a little girl rushed through my mind and made me sick, but I knew that sacrifices were going to have to be made. Unfortunately, I'll never even know why I'm killing this family, but I did my best to separate myself from the idea that these were good people. They had to have done something pretty bad to have powerful criminals hiring hitmen to kill them. I drove my SUV to their neighborhood and parked down the street
coming
at
upstairs,
3
by the way,
o'clock.
so just heads up.
Looking toward their backyard, I could see the father, Ronnie Williams, on the back porch. I knew I was going to have to kill him within the next half hour because the mother, Bridget Williams, would be picking up their daughter from school and would arrive home at 3:30, just like she did every day. I thought to myself how easy this job was to do since someone else had done the monotonous task of stalking these people and recording their schedule.
That's so bad.
I locked my vehicle and started walking toward the house. I knew where they kept their extra key in the front yard garden and made my way into the house from the front door. I waited for Ronnie to come back into the house for 10 minutes before I started to become impatient. I was going to need time to hide the body, I thought, and knew I needed to do this fast before Bridget and her daughter got home. I decided to push something over in the kitchen and hid behind the refrigerator as Mr. Williams slowly crept into the house, saying, "Hello?" I realized how truly inept this guy was by this. I waited until he came close enough and reached over to slice his throat open. He screamed, much to my dismay. I tackled him and plunged the knife into his neck violently, nearly cutting his fucking head off. Watching the blood drip onto the floor drained me in some way. I sat over the lifeless body of a man who never saw me coming. I collected myself and dragged his body to the basement. I made sure to leave no evidence for the police to find. Making my way up the stairs, I heard the front door opening.
Shit.
I remember the blood all over the kitchen floor. Shit, I said to myself. I heard the woman and her daughter start screaming at the sight of the gruesome murder. I quickly rushed upstairs. "Ma'am, I need you and your daughter to remain calm. I'm part of the FBI. I'm afraid a murderer has made his way into your house earlier this day,"
Really?
I said. "I want to see some identification," the woman abruptly demanded. I pulled out my fake badge I always carried around and showed it to them.
Oh shit.
Anyone who knew anything about federal badges would easily detect it as a fake, but most people don't. "Is my husband all right?" she asked. I told her he was downstairs. She slowly made her way down the basement stairs, and I followed closely behind. When she located her husband, she fell to her knees and began sobbing. That was when I pulled out my knife and slit her throat from behind. She was dead within seconds. Now for the hard part, I thought to myself. I made my way back upstairs to find the little girl. She was nowhere in sight. I frantically looked all over the house, but she was nowhere to be found. I grew increasingly worried. I knew I was going to be watched by the Overlord, and if he saw this clear display of incompetence, it would hurt any chances I had of working for him. I began walking up the creaky wooded stairs to continue my search. I knew I heard a sound coming from behind the door. I slowly and quietly made my way toward it. I wrapped my hand around the shiny doorknob and began to turn. A large German Shepherd jumped up on me, biting my arm.
Good.
This caught me by surprise. I'd been wondering where the damn dog was. I struggled with the beast on top of me for a few minutes, but it was not long that I had my blade through its skin, and its blood soaking the cold, wooded floor. After composing myself, I continued my search for the girl. This girl was barely 6 years old, I thought. Where could she have gone? There were enough rooms in the house that this could take a while, but I knew the longer I was here, the worse it was for me.
I hope she escapes.
I checked each room in the house thoroughly, but found nothing. That was when I remembered the girl's father had built a fort for her in the backyard. That has to be where she is. I began outside and exited the back door to the porch. I saw that small makeshift door on the fort door was closed, and I knew I'd find her in there. I walked over and opened the door to the fort. She screamed as I forcefully pulled her out of the fort. All her energy was spent trying to free herself. I tried calming her down, but to no avail. She was crying and sobbing uncontrollably. I brought her back inside to finish the job. I threw her to the floor as I mentally readied myself to drive my into focus. The screaming stopped, and I opened my eyes to see the lifeless corpse of the little girl oozing blood onto the floor. I started sobbing as the realization of my actions washed over me like a tidal wave of guilt and regret. I had to do it. I had to do it. I kept telling myself.
No, you didn't.
Yes, you did need to do it.
A strange voice exclaimed behind me. It sounded really familiar, but I had no idea where I heard it before. I turned around to see a large masked man standing behind me. He began to speak.
I know this whole ordeal has been difficult for you, killing your own daughter and such, but I'm...
What did you fucking say? This was my daughter? But my daughter's been dead for years, I said, cutting him off.
What do you think I did when I kidnapped her from you, Johnny boy? I stole her from you and gave her to a loving couple incapable of having a child of their own. And honestly, they did a much better job of raising her than you ever could have.
He calmly stated. Why would you do this to me?
Because I can. And if you even think of attacking me, a bullet will be through your head so fast your fucking head will spin.
I didn't know what to do. I fell to my knees and began sobbing. Why did I let this happen? Why, God? Fucking why? What the fuck was the point of any of this? I thought there was something strange about her. How could I have been so stupid? People always say, when you look into the abyss looks back. As I stood there, over the corpse of my dead daughter, looking into the eyes of the man who led me down the road to hell, I knew I was no longer looking down toward a monster. I was looking at an equal. The amount of self-loathing and hatred that lurked in my soul left me devoid of any other feelings. I knew that I was even more despicable than the monster that had dragged me down here, for he at least knew he was doing wrong. I have been nothing but a vigilante masquerading as a hero. I'm no hero. I never was. It's ironic in a way. I became the very thing I set out to destroy.
Yeah.
Quickly picking up my knife, I lunged at the man. I was stopped mid-motion, and everything faded into black.
It's over. Where do I start? So first off, let me just say sorry if my mom came in and I told her to leave because I really did not want her to come in. So I said, go away, please stop, right? That's what I always say to her. So yeah, anyway. But like, shit. He literally starts off the story going on the deep web, gets his family killed, then becomes a killer, kills his daughter, and then tries killing the guy that made him kill his daughter. Shit, man. Oh my god. This thing actually scares me too. Like, this shit. Like, killer stories are, like, pretty interesting, but, like, shit. Like, he literally just turned into a killer. I somewhat missed the part where he killed her, but he was yelling at her to go away. But, see, that's why I don't do videos when family's around. There's your answer, in case you were ever wondering. But, shit, I did not expect that to happen. I did not expect that. It was a good story. Pretty terrifying, really sad because he literally just killed his daughter. Shit, man. I thought she was dead for years now, too. Oh my god. Okay, well, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. I'm at a loss for words. I'm really like, shit, man. Shit. I don't know what to say. I'm just really shook right now. And I'm kind of tired for sitting here for 35 minutes straight, and I'm just kind of like, oh, my back, shit. That's actually terrifying. Like, I mean, I get it, because, like, you want to kill the people that are really bad, but then at the same time, like, you should rather them suffer. Like, there's really no answer for it for me. Like, I don't know what to really say, because then at the same, like you should never kill, but then at the same time, if you're trying to save someone, then it's like, you know. I don't know. It's complicated. I really wanted the girl to escape, and now knowing that that was his daughter, I really wanted her to escape because shit. I can't believe that happened. I cannot believe the story. This was a really good one. I do not want to watch any more stuff like this because shit, that's no. Damn, I did not expect that at all. That 35 minutes was definitely something. Wow. Anyway guys, I hope you guys did like this video because I did not. It was very gruesome and, you know, just very, like, it's not that I didn't like it, but it was a good story, but at the same time it's like shit, like, he literally just turned into a killer. He killed his daughter.